I still remember the look on that security guard's face. He wasn't angry, he wasn't rude. He just held up his hand, looked at the photo on his phone and quietly said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I've been instructed not to let you in." I stared at the picture. It was me. My own adopted daughter had given security my photograph, with one simple instruction. "Do not admit." I smiled sad. "I understand." Then I turned around and walked away. What happened 2 hours later changed every single life at that wedding. My name is David Carter. I'm 58 years old. My wife Laura, and I never had biological children. After years of failed treatments, we adopted a 4-year-old girl named Emily from the foster system in Chicago. The first time we met her, she hid behind a chair and wouldn't look at anyone. Laura knelt beside her. "You don't have to trust us today," she whispered. "We'll earn it." It took almost a year before Emily finally called us mom and dad. That remains the happiest day of my life. We gave her everything. Dance lessons, private school, college, her first car. When she wanted to study architecture at the University of Michigan, we paid every dollar without complaint. Not because we were rich, because we believed parents invest in their children. Not for repayment, but out of love. At least, that's what we believed. Everything changed after she met Ethan. He came from one of Detroit's wealthiest families. His father, Richard Whitmore, owned a chain of luxury hotels. Old money, done clubs, private jets. The kind of people who measured worth by the logo on your watch. The first time Richard met us, he barely shook my hand. "So," he smiled, "what exactly do you do?" "I own a construction company." His smile faded. Oh, that single word carried more judgment than an entire speech. After the engagement, Emily slowly changed. Phone calls became shorter. Family dinners disappeared. When Laura suggested wedding ideas, Emily would say, "We've already got professionals handling it." The distance hurt, but we convinced ourselves she was simply busy. Every bride is, right? Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Laura asked where we'd be sitting. Emily hesitated. "We're still working on the seating chart." That answer didn't feel right, but I didn't push. I wish I had. Wedding day arrived in beautiful Napa Valley, California. Laura wore the blue dress Emily had once said was her favorite. She even carried the small silver bracelet Emily had made in elementary school. "I can't wait to hug her," Laura whispered. Neither could I. We walked toward the vineyard entrance. Then the guard stopped us. "I'm sorry." He showed us the photo. My face, Laura's face, both marked in red. "Do not admit." Laura thought it was some terrible mistake. "It has to be." The guard quietly shook his head. These instructions came directly from the bride. Laura's knees nearly gave out. I caught her before she fell. For 30 years. I had prepared myself for almost every pain a parent could feel. But not this. Never this. I led Laura back to the car. She kept asking why. I had no answers. Only Isis. As we drove away, she cried so hard she couldn't breathe. I pulled over beside a quiet vineyard road and held her until the tears slowed. Then my phone buzzed an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes." "This is Richard Whitmore, Emily's future father-in-law." His voice sounded different, not proud, not arrogant, shaken. "The wedding is off." I froze. "What?" "They're coming to your house." I looked at Laura. Richard continued. "Do not answer the door." "What happened?" There was a long silence. Then he spoke. "I just learned the truth." Apparently Richard had believed Emily's story. She'd told his family that Laura and I were emotionally abusive, that we'd manipulated her, that she'd escaped a terrible childhood. She claimed we were unstable and might ruin the ceremony. That's why security had our photos. Richard had believed every word, until an elderly woman approached him during the reception, Mrs. Jenkins, Emily's former elementary school's teacher. She recognized us from family pictures Emily had once proudly shown in class. "Where are Emily's parents?" she asked. Richard casually replied. "They weren't invited." Mrs. Jenkins looked horrified. "What are you talking about? They adopted her. They saved that little girl's life." Richard laughed awkwardly. "I think you've misunderstood." "I haven't." She then told him everything. How Laura volunteered every week at school. How I coached soccer without missing a single game. How we created scholarship funds. How Emily constantly bragged about her parents. Richard suddenly realized none of it matched Emily's story. He confronted her. At first she denied everything. Then Richard asked one question. "If they abused you, why did they pay for your college?" Emily couldn't answer. Then he asked another. "Why is your mother's cancer treatment listed under your father's insurance?" Silence. Then she broke. She admitted she'd invented the entire story. She thought Ethan's wealthy family would never accept parents who owned a construction business. She wanted to appear self-made. She said having ordinary parents embarrassed her. The vineyard went completely silent. Ethan stared at her as though he'd never seen her before. Then he quietly removed his wedding ring. I'm marrying a stranger. And he walked away. By sunset, the guests were leaving. The flowers remained. The music stopped. The wedding was over before the vows even began. An hour later, our doorbell rang. Again and again. I remembered Richard's warning. Do not answer. Laura looked at me. What if she really needs us? I stood silently by the window. Outside, Emily sat on the porch, still wearing her wedding dress, completely alone. No limousine, no bridesmaids, no husband. Just our little girl. Broken. Laura couldn't take it anymore. She opened the door. Emily collapsed into her arms. I'm sorry. She sobbed so hard the words barely came out. I traded the people who loved me for people I wanted to impress. She turned toward me. Dad. I hadn't heard that word all day. I don't deserve forgiveness. No, I quietly answered. You don't. She lowered her head. But that doesn't mean you'll never receive it. Laura looked at me with tears in her eyes, because that's what parents do. Not because betrayal doesn't hurt, but because love sometimes survives even the deepest wounds. Months later, Emily entered counseling. She apologized publicly to everyone she'd lied to. She repaid every dollar we had spent on the wedding by working alongside me in the construction company. Not because I demanded it, because she insisted. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight. It took months, then years. But brick by brick, just like every house I'd ever built, our family slowly stood again, stronger, more honest, and finally, built on truth instead of appearances, because real family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by the people who stay, even after their hearts have been broken. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.